In order for us to overcome this, we got to come together, and who we voted for, which side of the aisle we rocking with, is of no consequence. We need to rock with people, with politicians who are rocking with us, and that is to increase our wages, our benefits, and to change our work conditions. And in that right there, that is the sweet spot.
Hey, GRIO fam, it's Gerren Keith Gaynor, White House correspondent and managing editor of politics at theGrio. And I'm here with Nina Turner, former Ohio State Senator and now the founder of We Are Somebody. Always a pleasure to have you. Welcome to theGrio.
Thank you so much.
So first, tell me why it was important for you to found this workers' rights organization, We Are Somebody, and tell us about the work that you're doing on the ground.
It was important because workers are certainly flexing their muscles. As we can see, this is the summer of solidarity. This is not the first time, but I think we have a lot of concentration here, and with the American people being very clear about their support for the House of Labor, this was an important time. I have been thinking about this for at least almost 8 months now, but just did not put it out into the world until a little less than a week ago now. But it really was drawn on the past, the present, and the future. And maybe you've seen the introduction video, but you see I draw a lot from the past on what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing with the sanitation workers, to Fannie Lou Hamer standing up for Black farmers. There is a connection between workers' rights and civil rights, or even more pointedly, workers' rights and the rights of Black people, more poignantly, not just people of color, but Black people, and that synergy between standing up against racism, anti-Blackness, and standing up for working class people. And then the draw on the present, it really was looking at the Alabama coal miners who went on strike for almost 2 years. And one of the reasons why they were able to do that is because they had a robust strike fund. They had leverage. Now, they lost that leverage over time because the company waited them out. But the main point is, almost over 1,000 workers teamed up and said, we deserve better. They had made sacrifices in 2016. They had been made promises. And even though they had a strong foundation in play, they had that strike fund and they did everything they were supposed to do to force that corporation to do right by them, they did not do right by them. And it was just looking at their struggle that made me think, wow, this is indeed the perfect time to do something of this magnitude. There is no other organization quite like it.
And let's talk about a really big worker strike that's happening right now in Detroit that has now expanded to Kentucky, the United Auto Workers strike. Given the size and scope of this particular strike, there are other strikes happening, as we know, in Hollywood. This could have a huge impact on the U.S. economy, the global economy, given the long movement for workers to not only get what they're owed and for protection, but also to kind of reshape the way big corporations operate. Do you think that this strike could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you will?
I do, to a point. I think we're going to have many such occurrences, because historically, this is not the first time that workers have lifted their voices and consolidated their power to get the attention of the corporatists. But the UAW being in play, we know what just happened recently with the UPS workers who are members of the Teamsters Union. They had a big impact on e-commerce, and they made it known that they were going to go out on strike if necessary. They did not have to go. And part of that, again, is speaking to leverage. UAW, the same thing in a different way. It's not necessarily e-commerce, but absolutely they're impacting right now. You may have seen the news that about, I don't know, maybe a week or so ago, that the Tesla workers, for example, they got a raise. Now, they didn't get a raise out of the kindness of Elon Musk's heart. They got a raise because UAW workers are out there striking, and that really caused Elon Musk to understand that he ain't want none of that. I'm saying that to say that the House of Labor is both union and non-unionized workers, that there is a synergy between what union members do and the impact that it has on our sisters and brothers and family and friends who are not in unions. We know the vast majority of Americans are not in unions, but the most important point is that working class people must form solidarity, unionized and non-unionized, because unless you got a sugar daddy, a sugar mama, a trust fund somewhere, you are among the working class. Some of us may be blessed to be in the upper echelons of the working class. Some are in the middle and some are at the very bottom. But what happens to one happens to us all, and any of us could be vulnerable at any moment. One major catastrophic event in our lives, whether it's health related or otherwise, could really wipe people out. And so we are somebody is definitely another foundational point to this organization is to bring together those who are already in the house of labor and those who are not, and to see this as a working class movement.
And I want to go back to the pandemic because that exposed a lot of racial inequalities in many different industries that many Black and brown people already knew, but perhaps the larger, broader America became aware of. How much of that do you think has led to this groundswell of workers revolting and striking right now?
It's definitely connected. All of these things are connected. None of this is happening in a vacuum. And we're looking at UAW, we're looking at the Teamsters, we're looking at nurses. We know that Kaiser workers, for example, I think 75,000 of them, the largest strike of healthcare workers in the country. All of it is built on something else that preceded it. And certainly the pandemic really exposed the fissures that exist between those who have not and those who have a whole lot at the expense. There was one stat that came out that showed that the billionaire class gained about $3.9 billion, or excuse me, $1 trillion worth of wealth, while working class people lost about the same amount. That is immoral. It is insane. It is really the cruel part of capitalism, and we are going to have to bring this back into balance. And so to see unions like the UAW make it very clear, we made you profits and it's time to share in that profits is important. And when it comes to people of color, as you have laid out, we tend to suffer the most when this country is in turmoil and is struggling on the economic side. Black people, brown people tend to feel it first. And as we know, the Black community in particular, the long legacy and history of anti-Blackness continues to plague us in our communities on the economic side. And it is vitally important. I firmly believe that when we deal with racism and anti-Blackness, that you can get to the core root of class and classism, that those two things are not in competition, that caste and class and analyzing a economic, looking at justice through an economic justice lens also forces us who are conscious minded and we understand to look at it through the lens of race too, that these two things are not diametrically opposed and they must be fought or fixed, if you will, together.
And looking at the history of workers, I think about white working class people, white working class voters, who, as you know, over the decades, kind of flocked away from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Why do you think that is so? And do you see an opportunity here for Democrats to win back some of those voters, given these workers' strikes are happening where there seems to be significant solidarity between Black and white workers?
I definitely see an opportunity there, not just for the Democratic Party. I want to expand this beyond the Democratic Party and make this about the needs of the people. And I understand exactly where you're going when you tease out the Democratic Party. Certainly the Republicans have proven themselves to be faux populist. And what I mean by that, some of them are showing up at some of these strike lines, but knowing good and full well they didn't support the PRO Act that's still percolating through the Congress right now, that they, about 138 of them signed on to a bill just last year. Now it's been reintroduced again, but a bill to take away the opportunity for unions to collect dues in states all across this country. So most of them are faux populists, and they are speaking to a hunger, to a culture war when they are not only against unions, but they throw up, critical race theory or wokeness. All of that stuff is a dog whistle, a bullhorn that strikes at the heart of some working class white people who sometimes don't necessarily understand, because they're being led astray by people with fancy titles, about the fact that if you are working class, you are in line with your sisters and brothers and family and friends from other walks of life. Now, the bright spot to that, though, and you pointed this out so beautifully, is that when we think about strikes and we think about people who work for UAW, Teamsters, the nurses, Starbucks, Amazon, you name it. I know I'm leaving out a lot of people. I'm just putting that out for example. Those people are working side by side, and some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats, some of them support Trump, some of them support Biden, Obama, Sanders. But what they have in common, and others, but what they have in common is that they are catching hell at the hands of the man or the woman or the person, where they have to come together regardless of political ideology and say that we catching the same type of hell, and that in order for us to overcome this, we got to come together, and who we voted for, which side of the aisle we rocking with, is of no consequence. We need to rock with people, with politicians who are rocking with us, and that is to increase our wages, our benefits, and to change our work conditions. And in that right there, that is the sweet spot. That is how we know that we can bring people together from all walks of life and all political ideologies, is because we're bringing them together based on a working class consciousness that, again, cannot leave out the dynamics of race. But yeah, I see promise in this problem for sure.
And kind of building on that, do you think that this could sort of reshape America's racial politics in a way in which white workers not only see solidarity in terms of common desires, but even sympathizing with their fellow Black workers and their individual challenges and barriers that they face as Black Americans?
Yes, we got to make it so. It's just not going to happen by accident. But we need leaders in the House of Labor, as they're fighting for these class issues, to reinforce the need to be in solidarity with people of color. And again, I keep pointing out Black people, because I believe that when the problems and the ills, when the Black struggle for liberation is lifted, everybody is liberated. So absolutely, that must happen, and that is something that We Are Somebody wants to play a pivotal role in being the bridge to making that happen. I went to the strike line of some of my sisters and brothers and family and friends in Streetsboro, Ohio, which is outside of Greater Cleveland. It is a parts plant, about 122 workers there, and you saw Black, white, seasoned, young. I mean, you saw people all together. And then most recently, I was in Milwaukee, again, a parts plant, but that was local 75, and Ohio's local 573, but local 75 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it was the same thing. People from all walks of life standing shoulder by shoulder and shoulder on a strike line to demand better wages, benefits, and work conditions. That is, I truly believe, one of the best opportunities that we have to get the white working class to understand that solidarity with their sisters and brothers of color will lift them as well. So yes, it is an opportunity, but we got to make it. So we can't be afraid. And I'm so glad that you and we're having this conversation. We can't be afraid to have these types of conversations and make it clear that we can do both, and nobody loses by us doing both, because a lot of Republicans make it a zero-sum game. If you do it on the basis of race, then you're going to lose. That's how they divide and conquer. And that is not the case. We rise and we fall together. And you have to have a consciousness when it comes to understanding the dynamics of racism and anti-Blackness in this country is at the core of all the other isms in the United States of America.
And what is next for We Are Somebody? You just launched. How has the public received your organization, and what's next?
It's been really good. I mean, a lot of press. People can go on wearesomebody.org and see the energy and the synergy. Different members of the House of Labor and other workers who are not even unionized have been reaching out to us. We have a portal on our website for workers. Let me put it that way, because sometimes when you say a House of Labor, people think we're only talking about unions. And several either Amazon workers, teachers, people have been reaching out saying we need your help. So I am really excited about what We Are Somebody can become. It's the genesis of this organization. Ultimately, the goal is to have a multi-million-dollar strike fund that can help workers leverage and to be able to be out there on that front line for longer, and to also help those workers who may not have the benefit of a labor union be able to get their message out. I say organize, amplify, and fund. So that is our goal. And we're not going to wait now till we get to that multi-million dollars, but that is really one of the major goals of We Are Somebody, because it is important that workers have the backup that they need materially to be able to hold out longer. Some of these corporations are willing, just like they did with the coal miners, to wait people out until they run out of money. And we want to be there to help them, not, help them to succeed. So that's where we are. So I'm really excited about what the future We Are Somebody can bring. And we have labor leaders who are in full support, people like Sarah Nelson, from the airline workers all the way to people like Stuart Applebaum, who represents the retail workers, to Christian Smalls of the Amazon Labor Union. We have academics. So this definitely is a family affair. It is all hands on deck. And hopefully there comes a time where fighting for a living wage is just commonplace. Maybe, hopefully there comes a time where we don't have to fight for that, that it is something that is a given in the United States of America.
We can only hope. Nina Turner, founder of We Are Somebody, thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me.